It ain't me. It ain't me. I ain't no millionaire's son. I was born into a single-parent family, the baby out of 4 children, after my biological father died in a plane wreck before I ever saw the light of day. No, it was. We lived with my mother's folks for a while, enjoying the love and companionship of a very large extended family. My mother was one of 6 siblings. She would remarry 5 years later, moving us into that middle-class lifestyle we would henceforth enjoy. My new dad taught us some wonderful things: how to hunt and fish, how to drive and water ski, how to live an upright spiritual life, how to love and care so much for others that he adopted a litter of children from 5 to 10 years old. The one responsible financial investment I have ever made in my life, I owe to my father, opening a life insurance policy I've been paying on for 50 years. So I was a fortunate son, indeed. Not in the sense of untold riches and wealth, but wrapped in the security of love and family ties, which bind us to this very day. Nevertheless, I find it just a little bit hilarious that I would stand up here to speak with you today concerning money. Me. I took an oath of poverty in 1985. In fact, I think it may be the only vow that I've ever kept successfully for my entire life. It was all a part of the luxury of my life to chase spiritual meanings and connections everywhere. Something which has never not been a part of my life experience. I lived one summer in a Christian commune up in Georgia. I took seriously in those days the rising conscience of my hippie roots, the warnings about selling out and corporate corruption, the messages from Jesus that a rich man had a tough time getting in. Money is a root of all sorts of troubles, we are told. Money and I are in a relationship in progress. Money is a spiritual challenge. So begins an article by Unitarian Universalist minister Dan Hotchkiss. Dan says, money is a medium of power through which we act and are acted upon. It arouses great passion in us and requires the best of us in moral reasoning and courage. Especially in a culture as saturated by financial forces as ours, a spiritual life that does not concern itself with money can have little effect on our daily lives. So says the Reverend Hotchkiss. Or, as the mother said to her child, it isn't really giving if you only give away the broken animal crackers. My all-time favorite film is a movie about a billionaire who comes into his own spiritual awakening in a rather dramatic fashion. This is a spoiler alert, but after all, the movie did come out in 1997. It's called The Edge. Anthony Hopkins, one of my favorite actors, lost in the Alaskan wild and hunted by a raging bear, finally confronts his nemesis and kills the beast in mortal combat with a rough-hewn spear. He later remarks to his fellow traveler in the woods, played by Alec Baldwin, "All my life I have wanted to do something unequivocal." "Well, Charles," says Alec, "I think this qualifies." That basic notion is the foundation for my sermon and for my life. The act of doing something unequivocal, something clear and unambiguous. The movie gives me hope that if a billionaire can do it, there is yet a chance for me. Millard Fuller gathered his first million by the age of 18, before he was out of college. Millard came up at the University of Georgia. He came upon the brilliant scheme to market tractor seats with the official Georgia Bulldog logo on them. $1 million? Brilliant. But he and his wife soon discovered the truth in their own lives that Roosevelt, we heard from, declared at his inauguration. Happiness lies not in the mere possession of money. So the Fullers gave away their fortune, and they co-founded Koinonia, that small Christian farming commune where I lived in Georgia, whose members renounce personal gain to live simply and communally. But the tireless entrepreneur with a Midas touch could not ignore his own drivenness, his God-given talent for creating mountains. He left the confines of the red clay hills of Georgia to found a multinational non-profit organization called Habitat for Humanity. In 1985, that was the year that I avowed my poverty, Chuck Collins gave away every penny of his inheritance, nearly $500,000, to organizations and groups working for the environment, peace, racial equality, and indigenous and gay people's rights. Collins, a lifelong Unitarian Universalist, explained in a UU World article, "The decision to give away my wealth felt like the first real decision I'd ever made." I just bet it did. He said, "Life presents only a few crystal clear opportunities to take risks for what you believe. And this was one. Unequivocal." Kimberly French, author of The Story on Collins, said that in the following 17 years since giving up his wealth, Chuck authored 4 books about the moral dispensation of wealth. One of them he co-authored with Bill Gates. This is put out by our own Beacon Press, the UUA. There was a battle they were putting out to try to prevent the repeal of the estate tax, you will recall, in 2002. And there were several millionaires who stood and said this is wrong. In that book they wrote, "There is something fundamentally American about the notion that what people do with their lives is more important than the station of their birth." Now I think we have something there on Collins. For me, that's a little bit easier lesson for those of us that are not born to wealth. Most of us will never be blessed with the opportunity to give away millions of dollars. No fortune waits to drown us in despair. I've often wondered, like that character Tevi in Fiddler on the Roof, would it spoil some vast eternal plan if I were a wealthy man? We hear a lot about the widening gap between the rich and poor. French's earlier article declares that the United States has more illiteracy, more and deeper poverty, more violent crime, larger prison and homeless populations, higher infant mortality, and lower life expectancy than any other advanced nation. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis said a century ago, "We can have concentrated wealth in the hands of a few, or we can have democracy, but we cannot have both." We are rushing headlong into madness. Yes, money is a spiritual challenge. To echo again the Reverend Hotchkiss, the money choices that most of us face each day are not technical questions that can be solved by a financial analyst. They are dilemmas for which no one has a final answer. Short of renouncing money for a life of poverty, we cannot escape the need to balance multiple, sometimes conflicting values. Now, what is all of that to do with us? Well, it is a sermon on giving, and yes, our church needs money. I know this church does not conduct a pledge drive. Well, we kind of have a pledge drive now, don't we, of sorts. And if you want to find out how passionate we are about money, just bring up the topic. I've been spending some time of late with the board and offering my services unasked. And many of you know, in fact, I think I've stated it up here, that it is my self-appointed goal to bring this church into the fold of Unitarian Universalist Association. Money. It was actually the first sermon that I preached at my last church gig. And you see how well that went over. But we do need money. To pay me, for one thing. Every delivering minister in this pulpit earns $250. Lay speakers, I think, get $200. Is that correct? If you do not think that we earn it, you can vote with your pocketbook. Even better, if you do not think we earn it, you can try it for yourself. We're always in the market for speakers. We need money to pay our rent, money to buy supplies, money to generously donate our 10% gross right off the top to local charities. And that is something I can't say for very many Unitarian Universalist churches that I know. Maybe we need just a little bit to sock away for who knows what. And then there is the wish list. I wish we had some money for sending delegates to General Assembly every year. That would change some people's lives. I wish we had some for training and education. I wish we could send our board on board retreats. Because I care about the future of this church, I hope someday that we can find just 4 more members and join the UUA officially, finally, as a congregation. Then we can also pay our fair share dues to help with the tremendous and enormous work of this great faith community. And when we do, just like in Greenpeace, everyone will get a magazine. I hear the stories all the time. Maybe it's your own. You walked into a UU church one day by chance or invitation, and you stayed because you found a home, a welcoming environment, an atmosphere of trust or safety, where you found that you could question freely, express yourself openly, give of yourself generously to a community aimed at helping one another and others. Let me tell you, that was not an accident of fate. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth, its sacrament, and service, its prayer. Many, many people labor long and hard and often unseen in the shadows so that you and I might find the spiritual sustenance we need in order to grow in love and face the daily challenges of our lives with more purpose and determination. But if you're relatively new, you may not know just how crucial and influential have been the movers of this faith, both historically and today. 5 presidents: P.T. Barnum, Louisa May Alcott, Oliver Wendell Holmes, Julia Ward Howe, Paul Revere, May Sarton, Emerson, Thoreau, so many others. Charles Darwin. I could go on and on. In fact, I think I will. Selma, Alabama, where 500 Unitarian Universalists in our little bitty association responded to Dr. King's call. More ministers than any other faith that was called in to help. Our association at that time was only 4 years old. And our own Reverend James Reeb was murdered for the cause. We own Beacon Press, the first to publish in full the Pentagon Papers. We helped to lead the fight for same-sex marriage, especially here in Florida, where a majority of the claimants in the lawsuits were Unitarian Universalist. The first denomination to ordain a female minister. And I would say that we have more gay and lesbian ministers today than any other denomination, with the possible exception of the Metropolitan Church. The Our Whole Lives sex education program, produced and taught by Unitarian Universalist churches, counters the obsession for ignorance we foment on our children in schools and churches alike throughout this country. John Haynes Holmes, Unitarian minister, anti-war pacifist, and white co-founder of both the NAACP and the ACLU. This is what it all boils down to for me. I don't give because the church needs money. Everyone needs money. there's a lot more need than I can personally address. I must be selective. I do not go to a clothing store because they convince me they need my money more than another. I buy the clothes because they fit. They fit my need, my style, my appetite. A garment factory in Bangladesh collapses, as one did 5 years ago, killing more than 1,000 people. I choose to ask myself whether my purchasing habits in any way may have contributed to this. I choose to go deeper, to get involved, to see beyond the limited horizon of my wallet. When Chuck Collins was explaining his decision to renounce all of that inherited wealth, he said, "I want to cast my lot with everyone else I know. I would rather work for a society where people take care of each other and not one based on whether you can amass a small fortune to provide basic care." He said, "I'm working toward the time when the idea that I can drive as big a car as I want, use up as many resources as I want, just think about my kid and nobody else, will be unimaginable." Those are the connections for which I live. This right here is where it all ties in to pledging. This is what it means to say that money is a spiritual challenge. Stewardship is not about how much you give. It is about how much it matters that you give. Greg Ward, author of Our Story for All Ages, said, "Sure, it's possible to show love and find love and offer love and even make love without it costing a dime. But try to sustain that love over the long haul. In the tough moments and tender spaces of this real world, without spending any money, try to keep love from growing anemic without any budget, and you will find it very difficult to keep what connects you to this lovely person or place alive and vital. You may end up like Bert and Matilda, unable to hold on to the very thing you cherished most. After all, $5 is $5.